Julia, it's so good to have you on the Jewelry Business Academy podcast today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Robin. It feels really exciting to come full circle and be now a guest on your podcast.
I know because you were listening to the podcast a little bit before you joined the Jewelry Business Academy. So for anyone who's listening, I have been working with Julia for a couple of months now. You've been a part of the Jewelry Business Academy. Is it 3 or 4 months now, I think?
I think, yeah, something like that. So yeah,
Yeah, a couple of months, but it actually feels like you've been part of the program for like a lot longer. So I got to know you and your business really at a really deep level. And I'm so excited for you because you're kind of still in the early stages of your business, which is just, it's such a fun stage of business. There's so much growth. There's so much just expansion in that season of business and excitement and new things. And I'm looking forward to diving into all of that with you today. And also, side note, Julia is South African. I'm also South African. So we connected on our first call because I was like, oh my gosh, your accent just sounds like home. And you know, when you're living abroad, and we love living abroad, but also when you hear that accent, it just takes you straight back to home. And it's like, oh, it's very comforting to hear. So do you want to just start us off, Julia, by giving us a little intro as to who you are, your business, how you kind of got into your business, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Julia and my jewelry brand is called Julia Duff, which is actually my middle name as well. I was an architect. I studied architecture in South Africa and then I moved to the Netherlands almost 13 years ago. I always loved doing creative things, but somehow, I don't know, over the years, you find yourself in a career or something that is maybe not necessarily 100% fulfilling you, and it can be difficult to put your finger on the reason why. But I guess when we're not feeling 100% satisfied, we also start searching a little bit of like, okay, where can I find that joy? So, when was it? Maybe about 6 years ago, I started doing a jewelry making course with now a very good friend of mine, Sandra Savelli. She has her own jewelry line as well. And that was just such an eye-opener for me. It was like, oh my gosh, I really, really loved it because also as an architect, you think you're going to be busy with your hands making models like you were in university, but actually you end up spending the majority of your time behind the computer. So it was just so wonderful for me just to get back that sense of tactility and be making something with my hands, and also having full control of the design process and just like having an idea, sketching it and trying it. And then after a few hours, you have something that you can hold in your hands. That was just magic for me. So it stayed as a hobby for quite a few years. I think after some years, it started to build. And I remember like every morning I would cycle to work and I would be fantasizing about like, changing careers and going into jewelry full time, but it seemed like such an unattainable dream. So I sort of kept it small and didn't even really let myself fully dream it because it just seemed so crazy. And then, Corona hit. And, we start to question everything. And I sort of lost a lot of motivation. And then out of that, I actually hit quite a big burnout when I had to come back to work. And that just spun off into this whole, very long trajectory of really when I started coming out of it, of thinking, what do I really want and what really is going to make me happy? And then the jewelry dream resurfaced. And actually, thanks to your podcast as well, I got the courage to say, okay, I'm going to go for this dream. So that's a little bit the short and sweet version.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I think what you shared when you were talking about the fact that you were an architect and it's something that you had wanted to do for many years. And it's not that you hated it. It's like it sounds like you quite enjoyed that job, but it wasn't like fulfilling you at like a soul level from what I hear. Is that correct?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that when you're in that position where things are okay, it's actually very hard to make a shift. Very hard. It's much easier when things are like very much hellish and you just like, get me out of here, I'll do anything. Like that's much easier to shift from than from a job which is like, okay, it's like, yeah, it's going okay. It's the same as relationships. Like it's much easier to leave
Absolutely.
if it's bad than if it's like, okay. So, you know, I think a lot of our listeners are going to resonate with that, because I think there's a lot of people who are in a similar position to where you were a few years ago. And, you know, the coronavirus definitely threw a spanner in everyone's lives. And there was a lot of bad things that came from that, but there's also a lot of benefits. I think, you know, the fact that we were forced to pause and to kind of reevaluate where we're spending our time, our energy, how we're moving through life, like it kind of got everyone off the hamster wheel for a good amount of time, enough for us to like become more self-aware again and be like, well, is this how I want to be spending my life? Is this how I want to be spending my days? And then the fact that you had to go back, I think you're definitely not alone. I hear so many people who had to go back after that whole lockdown season of life, and it's hard. It's hard to go back if it wasn't something that you were absolutely loving, especially after that break. So what would your advice be to someone who's listening to this, who's like, I'm there right now. I'm feeling so burnt out. I am trying to make this work, but my heart's not in it. And I know I want to like build this jewelry business potentially, but you know, I just don't even have the headspace to think about it because I'm just trying to survive right now. What would your advice be to them?
I think, well, step one for me was in this whole journey of learning is just actually learning to take care of myself. And I waited too long for that I ended up having a burnout and like the body says no. So I think if you're in that sort of space, number one would just be to try and slow down in whatever way is possible to you. You know, maybe that's just on your weekends, or maybe it's just cutting down on some social stuff and just coming back to yourself and just allowing yourself, try to find that space where you can actually, you know, let the creativity flow, and then maybe some opportunities will come to you that way. And I think what I've also learned from you, such a big thing, is just to break it down and see if there are some really small steps that you could take towards your dream, and also let yourself dream, you know. I think that's also a massive thing. I didn't really let myself dream that for a very long time. And when I was coming out of my burnout, I was also working with a career coach. She helped me immensely. She was also fantastic. And at some point, it's quite crazy if I think back that I'd been working with her for, I don't know, 8 months or something like that. And we went on this whole roundabout journey. And at the end of the 8 months, I was like, yeah, well, actually, I kind of wanted to have my own jewelry brand. And she was like, what? Like, okay, wow, hold up. We're going to save this for the next session. But it sounds like you really just need to give yourself the opportunity to dream this dream, you know? And I just went and like I had an evening for myself. I was journaling and I was just, yeah, like having a really nice moment to just like allow this dream to be in front of me and write it down and look at the words, you know, because that was the biggest step. Yeah. So if someone is struggling, would say, you know, let yourself dream the dream.
Oh my goodness. I just got goosebumps when you shared that. Because yeah, I think especially after COVID, the world did feel like it was falling apart for a lot of people. For me, I felt like it was literally falling to pieces. And so it's very hard to even allow yourself to dream when you're in that mindset. And then again, if you've been brought up in a way where, you know, those standard jobs are just the way that you go, the career that you follow, you need to follow some kind of standard career that's already been in place and established and that you know about. It's also, again, very hard to see a jewelry business as even like vaguely potential for replacing that career. So I think so many people are going to need to have heard that, like, allow yourself to dream, and creating space in your calendar is going to give you that headspace to start dreaming and start seeing the potential of what's out there. And one of the things I say all the time, you've probably heard me say this so much, is like, curate who you're following on Instagram and what podcasts you're listening to, and listen to people who've done what it is that you're dreaming to do, so that you are just inundated with evidence that that dream that you have is possible. There's all these people who've done it. And I think when you immerse yourself in that world, it starts becoming like less like, oh, there's no way I could do this, to more like, oh, well, this person's done it, this person's done it, this person's done it. There's no reason why I can't, like, at least try and make it work as well. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to quickly touch on burnout, because we throw the word burnout out there all the time. But I was talking to another business owner the other day, and everyone has different versions of burnout. I have hit burnout where I couldn't physically get out of bed for weeks, couldn't even lift my arm. Like, I was immensely weak. But then some people have burnout where they're like, no, I'm still getting things done, but I've lost that spark. And so, like, I would like to know what your version of burnout looked like, so that somebody who's listening can, like, maybe there's people who will feel like, oh, I didn't even recognize that this was potentially burnout.
Yeah, for sure. Indeed, it's so different for different people. So I think what happened with me, it was almost like a slow build up to it, and that was the build up of getting to work from home, which actually suits my personality really well, and then being told, no, now we're going to have to go back 5 days a week to the office. And that moment, it sort of built up to such a stress that when I came into the office that day, I just couldn't control my tears. And it was just like a kind of panic attack that set in. That happened twice. So I think for me, it was like this feeling out of control of your emotions, where normally it might be a stressful situation and you could say, oh, I maybe feel like the urge to cry, or I feel uncomfortable, but I'm able to sort of tame it, or maybe I can let it out later, or maybe I can just move on. This was just like uncontrollable. So I think that was a major emotion. And that sort of, from that moment, it felt like something broke for many months. I feel like, now finally it's mostly under control and I feel really good. But it felt like from that moment, something changed. And I had been trying so hard to hold up this facade of being okay, or just going along with what other people wanted me to do and to fit in this sort of mold. And at that moment, I was like, I literally can't go back into that little box anymore. And then after that, it was a sort of not as intense as you describe, of not being able to lift my arm and so on, but it was just like listlessness and just not having any motivation. And I think there are some warning signs that come before that of, I went through different stages of not really enjoying what I was doing. And at some point we're like, no, but I'm going to change it. And you have a bit of energy and fight to do something. But then once you slip into a different stage of not caring, that's the dangerous part. So I think that's a bit of a warning sign. That was a prelude to the burnout of like not really caring anymore. And that sort of carried through afterwards into the burnout after I had these kind of panic attack moments. So yeah, it was just, and also purposelessness because I hadn't decided, okay, I'm going to go for my jewelry business. And I just felt like I had failed and I couldn't control. And that was the biggest issue for me. And then once you're at home and you're not working, then it becomes this loop of not really feeling useful. So I honestly think that having decided I'm going to go for the jewelry and I have a new purpose in my life, that helped me, like actually healed me 100%. It like from going from having no energy to, there was also a physical aspect of it. Like I went back to South Africa a few months. When I got back to the Netherlands, I remember having to cycle around and I just couldn't. I just had no energy. Now I was just today biking all around the city and I was thinking back to when I was in my burnout. I was like, this a few months ago, I couldn't even do this. It was just exhausting. So I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but I think that's the having the purpose, so that's such a massive one.
I love that you brought this up so much, because this is what I've seen with myself and with like so many business owners is when people hit burnout, they think that, oh, maybe I'm just doing too much. I just have to pull back. And sometimes that may be the case, but more often than not, when I see people with severe burnouts or like what you described or what I had, it's actually not that you're doing too much and you're not taking care of yourself. It's that you are spending your energy on something that doesn't fulfill your purpose. And
Exactly.
so when
Yeah.
you actually get clear on that, I think what most people need, I think Jay Shetty says this all the time, people are looking for inner peace and purpose, those two main things. And if you can fulfill those, you're going to be content. I mean, nobody should be chasing happiness. You can have moments of happiness. You're never going to be happy all the time. You're going to experience all these emotions. But if you can get inner peace and purpose, it is going to serve you so much. And that's what I found with me when I hit burnout. It's because I lost my sense of purpose. And
Absolutely.
I thought it was because I was doing too much, but actually I was just spending my time and energy on things that no longer fulfilled me. And it sounds like for you, it's like, yeah, it doesn't take that much energy to go sit in an office job and do your job. You had been doing it for years. You knew how to do it. You were effective at it. But it's like what drains you, and what I've seen is that when you're spending your time and energy on something that no longer fulfills you and no longer serves you, it just wipes you out completely. And then when you find your purpose, like now you've found, like, I want to build this business. I've seen how much time and energy you've poured into it, and you're still kind of recovering from burnout. But you get this like new surge of energy when you are following and doing work on something that fulfills you deeply. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, 100%. I think also one of my previous colleagues, she also suffered from something similar, but she described it as a bore out, which I thought was quite interesting as well.
That's great.
Not quite, but yeah, I mean, interesting way of putting it. But absolutely, I'm still sometimes amazed at how much energy I have in the day, and like I just think, wow, I'm still ready to go, because when you're doing it for yourself, it's just a completely different ball game.
Oh yeah, 100%. So, I know there's so much that I want to touch on that you shared. So I'm just like, I have to make sure we keep
Let's
this in an
go.
hour. But I think one of the things I do want to chat about is, you've been in the Jewelry Business Academy now for a few months. You've been part of our community. You've connected with the other jewelers. And before we dive into like your experience of being in the academy, can you just share how you were feeling before we started working together? Like, what challenges were you facing before we kind of got together and dived into your business with you?
Yeah, so it was, I really have a vivid memory of this time because it felt like it was this total pivot moment for me. So I had decided to go on a nice trip away with my boyfriend. And just before that, I'd also been sending, I can only think of the Dutch word, sollicitatie. What is it? Like when you try to get a job, what is it
Oh
called?
yeah, resumes.
Yeah, so I was sending out to get a job. Yeah, sorry, I can't speak English properly anymore.
No, that's perfect.
And I just felt like I had to do that because, my money was going to run out and I needed to get a job. And although everything in my body was still having this like allergic reactions, like I felt good on a normal day to day, but when it came to the work and imagining I'm going to have to sit in an office somewhere, it still felt like I was back at square one. But nevertheless, I was sending out these applications. And one of them was quite a nice office, I must say. For the first time, I felt quite excited about it. And in the meantime, I would started listening to your podcast. So this was sort of an underlayer going on. And then we went away on this great trip. We went to Vietnam. And towards the end of the trip, I heard that I didn't get this other job. And I was actually really upset because I thought it was finally something that kind of fitted. So I was feeling really, really upset. But I remember I was like, I couldn't sleep the night that I heard that I didn't get it. And I was just like listening to your podcast and like in the meantime. And it really felt like, when I think back, it's so meant to be. But if it wasn't for your podcast, I wouldn't have had the courage to actually think that this is a viable option, that this is actually something that I can do. So when I got back from the trip, I was just feeling pretty low because I was like, okay, my only sort of way out that seemed like the best of the worst options is fallen through. And now what am I going to do? And there was just this tiny voice in the, saying like, hello, like, there's the jewelry. It's been staring at you in the face all the time. And then I was just kind of constantly listening. I like totally binged all of your episodes. And it just gave such a sense of hope and like, you can do this, and you spoke about many different types of businesses. Some of them are like more advanced and some are just getting started. And I just sort of thought, okay, I'm just going to give it a try. I don't have anything to lose. So we hopped on the call and I was just like, oh my gosh, you were saying, yeah, for sure. You definitely are a great candidate, and I think I suffered a lot before this with like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I don't know anything about business and I'm not really established. And you were like, no, that's not a problem. This is perfect if you're just getting started, because instead of having to redo everything, we can do it properly the first time around. So then it was so exciting. I remember being quite scared about the initial investment because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have an income properly at this moment. But for like 100%, I'm so happy that I chose to do that and actually chose for myself, because I think for a long time before this, I remember this feeling of like thinking I'm going to wake up as an old lady and have this massive regret that I never just tried and I never went for this dream. And I was accepting that that was going to be the case. And now, thanks to your program as well, even if, let's say, something doesn't work down the line, at least I know I've tried and I'm going for it full heartedly. And that just gives me so much satisfaction and joy. Like I can't even tell you. So that was a little bit the prelude to being into the program.
Oh my goodness. I love hearing this because I didn't know the story before. I didn't know
Yeah.
all the details. But
Yeah.
one thing I just want to touch on quickly is the fact that, looking at like your 80-year-old self, looking back on your life. I do this all the time when I have to make decisions because we have to make so many decisions on a daily basis. It can be overwhelming. And I have two approaches for doing this. One is to say, well, if I had a daughter, what advice would I give them? Because we usually give them way better advice than we give ourselves. And if I was 80, looking back on my life, what would I give it my advice then? Like, what would I have hoped that I did? And what would I have hoped that I tried? And there's this one other image as well. I just want to share all of these quickly because I think it may be helpful for anyone who struggles with decisions. But I remember seeing this cartoon thing randomly many years ago where somebody died and they went to heaven and they were like checking into heaven, and behind this angel they saw these shelves of boxes, and there was just a few boxes that had been opened, and they're like, what's that? And they're like, those are all the things you could have been in your life. Those are all the things that we had in store for you, and you just didn't like go for them. You just went for these like 3 boxes at the beginning, and we had all these other opportunities for you, but you just didn't choose to take them, which is totally fine. And I just remember thinking like, whoa, like I don't want that to be me. And so whenever I'm making these type of decisions, like those are the 3 different perspectives I'm looking at. And I think when we talk about failure, I was listening to a podcast about this the other day, and it really hits home. We are so scared of failing because of what other people are going to think of us if we fail. But to me, failure is just not trying. I'd rather fail a million times at a million different things. I've actually never been scared of failure in business. What I have been scared of is saying, oh, I want to start a business, but I'm just going to dabble or go like half and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, because then I'm always going to know it didn't work because I only dabbled, or it didn't work because I only gave 50%. And I wonder what would have happened if I gave a bit more. I wonder what would have happened if I put my whole heart and soul into that. And I think about that like for everything, like business and relationships, all of this. Like, I just want to know I'm okay with it failing. I'm okay with relationships failing. Just want to know that I put 100% in and like my best at that time. So that like, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be. I tried. I did my best. I learned all these lessons, and then you can move on. But yeah, the thought of, I think when we look back of our 80-year-old selves looking back on our lives and being like, oh, I wish they had tried that instead of just like sitting at that desk all day long. Like, you have so much life to live. But I want to dive a little bit more into this because you actually did a recent post on Instagram, which I loved. You were celebrating, I think, your 3.5 months anniversary in your business or something like that.
Yeah.
And you were talking about your business building journey and how you feel like you already have a new degree in life and you've learned so much about yourself. and you feel like you've actually started a new life that you're the author of. And I just love the way that you frame this, because to me, business building is more than just building a business that gives you that financial security and freedom and all of that. It's about getting to know you yourself, finding your voice, and getting like growing so much as an individual. And I feel like you really captured that in that post. But do you want to share a little bit more about like how just your 3.5, maybe you're 4 months in now, how much growth you've experienced as an individual, and how you feel like, you know, you're now the author of your life again?
Yeah, indeed. That was a nice post that really came from the heart, because I really mean it. And sometimes I feel like even more than just the business, the actual jewelry, this has just been such a lesson in actually self-worth, which I must say is also really a lot thanks to you. Um, Maybe I'm going to just digress a little bit there, because I also feel like I have never been in such an encouraging environment. And I think without that, it was very difficult, maybe especially for women, to really find that confidence and belief in themselves. So this has just been so refreshing, and just also having you there to be like, go for it, and don't care what other people think. And that has also been such a major learning curve for me, and especially also the relationship with Instagram and doing my own podcast and just all of these things where it's like, this feels really uncomfortable, but doing it and practicing it, it makes me feel really good. And it's just like, just be you, just try to be as authentic as you can, and things will come to you, and people will resonate with that, who need to resonate with that, and people who don't like it can just find something else. That's totally fine. So I think learning that along the way with this business has just been such a massive life lesson for me. Also struggling my whole life a bit with self-confidence and a bit this imposter syndrome. So I feel like this is maybe my big lesson to learn first, and hopefully the business grows along with that as I also grow in my confidence. And also just what I've been loving is having to do a little bit of everything. Like, it's very intense because I'm also doing the making. I'm doing everything, and it can be difficult to prioritize and time management and all of that. But I think also what you've provided in the training at the program is really breaking everything down to help with these things, because I really come from also a very creative background as an architect, and then we just learn about making concepts and form and shape, but nothing about business. I think at high school I did like one semester with business, and so it's such a lack of my knowledge, also with marketing. So it's been from that aspect just also like thrown in the deep end, and I'm sure I'm still making massive mistakes, but it's okay, because it's also fun, and it's just like, it also feels really empowering to learn all of these different skills. So
Amazing. Yeah, I love hearing that. I think, well, there's a lot that I want to touch on, but I think the fact that we don't learn a lot of the life skills that we need to survive as or thrive as human beings in school. Even just the basic things of building our confidence. Like, we learn languages, but we don't learn how to find our voice and communicate properly, and I have a lot to say on this, but
yes.
and it's like, and yeah, we learn business concepts, but we don't learn how to actually build businesses. I wish I could go and like dive into the school system a bit more, because my parents were they were teachers, principals and stuff in school systems for many years. So I see their perspective on it, but I also see like all these concepts of being like learning about business versus building a business is very different. Why not get all the 14-year-olds to build their own business? Why are we not doing that? It's so much more fun, so much more interactive. Doesn't have to be an actual business that makes it long term, but you learn so much when you're actually doing and taking that action. I totally gone off track here, but
yeah, this is a whole nother podcast. I think we're both quite passionate about this, especially after going through also this burnout. I'm like, what the hell? Like, we're all just being trained to not listen to our bodies, so
Oh yeah. No,
Makes me mad.
it makes me so angry when I think about it, because you go
Yeah.
through like the whole school system is trained to
Mm.
make out little people who are going to thrive in the corporate environment. That's essentially what it is. But we can dive, well, but we'll bring you back on and we'll dive into this deeper.
Okay.
But you know, I think, yeah, everything that you said makes a lot of sense. And I'd love to know, because you've been on our group coaching calls, you've been like working with me. What would you say has been like your favorite part of being in the Jewelry Business Academy and working with me as you grow your business?
I think, surprisingly enough, I really love this Facebook group. And I do have to confess that when we first had our call and you said, "Oh, there's a Facebook group," I just thought, "Oh my God, what is that?" I don't have a Facebook. Well, I do, but I never look at it. I was like, "Facebook, what?" But now I had to also giggle to myself, because the other day I was maybe it was with our business buddies that I was saying, "Isn't it amazing, this Facebook group?" Because it's almost like, in life when you have a problem and you kind of think, I wish there was like a Google for God that you could just write like, "I have this issue. Can you tell me the answer?" Well, we
Yeah.
have it with you with the Jewelry Business Academy. Because literally, if you have any issue, you could just write the question and then you come up with really, really insightful feedback, which is so incredible. And I just don't know of any other sort of system or group or anything where that is so supportive. So that has just been incredible, to just know that there is a place where you could share your troubles or your wins, and you're going to get some really supportive feedback. And then also every now and then also giving some encouragement to other people. That feels really amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I agree. I think we have like a really special Facebook group, like community in there. And it's the people that make it. It's you and the other members that make it what it is. And I remember when I was starting that group, I was like, I don't know if people are going to engage here. And we had to really structure it in a way that feels safe for everyone, because everyone's very open and very vulnerable with what's going on in their business. So we wanted to create a safe space, but we also wanted to be a place where, you know, people feel comfortable just sharing and actually showing up, because you can have a group and nobody can post in there. So
Yeah,
I think it's so special how everyone's embraced it and they show up for themselves, they show up for one another. And yeah, I totally agree. Having a version of that for just life would be wonderful as well. I've actually had that before. I've had life coaches like that, and it makes a huge difference, because it's like, why do we feel like in today's world that we have to go through life and business on our own? Like, we need those communities. We need people who understand the journey we're on and aren't going to, when we have these challenges, be like, "Oh, you're overreacting," or "Oh, that's not a big deal," or "Oh, I've never heard of that before." We need people who understand, like, "Oh yeah, no, this is relevant. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's our next steps. How does this feel? Like, should we look at other alternatives?" And again, just keep building that momentum in our business and our life, because it's so easy to be inundated with things that are happening and questions that you have and problems that you have, and you're like, "I actually don't know what to do here."
And then you get stuck and then you don't move forward. So I think that's the main issue, right? Yeah.
And you get stuck in that cycle of indecision and inaction, which is actually where most entrepreneurs that fail, that's where they fail. They get stuck in that little pot, which is, you've seen, it's easy for that to happen. So, I'd love to know, what would you say has been one of the biggest lessons that you've learned since joining the Academy?
Oh, I think I have to directly think, and I think I even have it written on my little noteboard here, is your favorite quote of "Take messy action." Because I'm also from this, like I said, this more design sort of aesthetic world. And that's very difficult for me sometimes, of just like, okay, this isn't perfect, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. Let's say referring to the social media stuff, or also in general. So I think that has been the biggest lesson, to just do something, just take action, and then you're going to get to the next place, and then you can improve, instead of just sitting and trying to make it perfect before you let it out into the world, and then everything has passed you by already. So
Oh yeah, messy action is a big thing that we prioritize in the Academy, and you've really just gone all in and embraced it. I remember when we started working together, like your Instagram was so perfect, and it still looks so aesthetic. Like, whoops, I just nearly broke the microphone. It still looks so aesthetic and gorgeous, but you've definitely like softened a bit. You definitely just showing up more real. You found your voice before you were comfortable. I remember when you were starting your podcast, you're like, I'm not too sure about this. I was like, just do it. We're just gonna do it. And like now you look like a natural when I see your clips and you're chatting to your guests. And are you feeling more comfortable doing that?
I must say, I still get a little bit the butterflies. Maybe that's a sort of leftover from this burnout of kind of controlling regulating your reactions. But I think that's kind of normal. I mean, I used to have that also when I was doing like dancing as a kid, and just before you have to go on stage, you also get a little bit nervous. But it does start to get easier. But it makes you feel very alive as well. So I kind of also enjoy it a little bit. A little bit of nerves isn't so bad.
Yeah, it's kind of excited nerves, which is a good
Yeah.
thing. I think it's again pushing those growth boundaries of ours, and just always just pushing ourselves a little bit outside of our comfort zone to keep the growth happening.
Oh yes, absolutely. It feels like this has just been one big outside the comfort zone journey. So
yeah, for sure. So what would you say have been some of the wins that you've celebrated since being in the Jewelry Business Academy? They can be big or small. I know we're still in the early stages with your business.
I think in terms of also just myself, just feeling more confident in myself. I think the first time also selling pieces to a stranger was a huge win for me, because mostly in the beginning it's just been people that I knew. So I think that first few sales to people outside of the bubble was like, yeah. Then it's really kind of proof that actually this can work, whereas before you still maybe think, okay, but just they know me and they like me and this and that. So that was a massive one. I think also maybe not a win, but just what I found so much fun was doing the first photo shoot with some models and with a very talented photographer, and seeing maybe this vision that I had in my mind of what it could be, and then even taken to a next level working with this photographer, because he just makes such beautiful stuff. And then just what we kind of made together, that was just such a massive win. And then, yeah, every step along the way, like finishing the website and having something that's actually out there, massive win. And I think also last weekend was a massive win for me, because I don't know if you remember me speaking about some of these previous events on the calls, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me, these events. I find it very draining, because also naturally I am kind of an introvert. I mean, I can chat well and I can socialize, but it's quite exhausting. So I'd had a couple of these outdoor markets, and one was okay, and then one felt like a total disaster, and I was just completely demoralized. And I thought, I don't want to, maybe I want to cancel the next ones that I've scheduled. But maybe something like what you spoke about earlier, of saying I need to just give 100% and I need to try and do my best because I'm in this. So I thought, okay, I need to upgrade my display a little bit. I need to make sure that it's really as good as it can be. So I spent a lot of time and energy doing that, and then it really made a big difference. So that was also a major win. I felt super proud to be standing at my stall instead of the previous week. I was like, oh, I don't know if it looks nice. I was making myself a bit small. And then that really comes through. I think people pick up on that. And so that felt like a really big win, of having seen a problem, and instead of like getting trampled down by it, of like, no, okay, I'm going to make it better and we're going to get through this. So I think that felt really, really good.
Oh, I love hearing that. And I hope you're okay with me sharing this. If not, we can edit it out. But I know we had a conversation, I think it was over Facebook or on one of the group calls, about the events and the displays. And I know your concern was like, I actually just don't think my price point, because your price point's a little higher. It's handmade jewelry. Of course, it's priced perfectly for what you're selling. But for the events, you're like, I don't think people are going to spend this amount of money at these events. So
Yeah.
I'm just not doing, like, this isn't going to work. And I remember having this conversation. Well, no, I don't think that's the case. It's not the price point. It's the display isn't attracting your ideal customer.
Exactly.
And like, do you think like that was
It's
the
definitely
case?
true, because the previous event, I also had put the prices on the display, and everything was a little bit dark. I mean, I love black and that is my aesthetic, but it doesn't always work on an outdoor market display. So then this next one, I didn't have the prices, and that really showed like it doesn't really make a difference, because people that are really interested, they stay and then they ask, and then you go from there. So I couldn't use that as an excuse anymore, because people that are not my ideal customers still are going to walk by, and the other ones, this, with my upgraded display elements, they kind of came to me. So that was it was really a good lesson to myself, because I even during that event on Sunday, some people did just walk by, but and then I thought, oh, is it that they think it's too expensive? And I'm like, no, because your prices are not there. So I was still having to retrain myself to get out of that narrative that I'd convinced myself about. So it just goes to show, and it's definitely true that, yeah, the price is not the number one factor that makes people buy or doesn't buy. So
no, and I'm so glad that you shared that, because I definitely know we have some listeners who needed that reminder. Your price is very rarely the reason people are buying or not. So there's people buying $20,000 rings, like $5,000 stuff, $500 stuff, $50 all the time, every day. And, we have to keep that in mind. It's very rarely the price. It's usually everything else that goes with it, and the way it's being presented. But I just want to also touch on your brand, because I know you have chosen to really focus on gender inclusive jewelry. You use the word inclusive, don't you?
Yes.
And I know this was a bit of a thing that we had quite a few conversations about, because let's be honest, it's controversial for some people, and some people love it, some people don't, and you've had some controversies around it, and you've had to really get comfortable with that. So whatever you're comfortable sharing, do you want to just talk a little bit about this? Because this is what a lot of people shy away from, and I've really encouraged you to go all in on what it is that you're wanting to do and ignore all the outside voices. And what a lot of people do is they think they listen to the outside voices and they try appeal to everyone. When you do that, you appeal to no one. And what you're doing,
like a wedding DJ, right?
Like a wedding DJ. It's the worst. I was at a wedding the other day, and oh my gosh, they did one of those playlists where everyone submitted a song, and it's the worst. Oh my gosh. And that's kind of what happens with businesses when people are like, oh, but I don't want to offend anyone, and I don't want anyone not to like me. I want everyone to like me. Well, then nobody likes you. And what you've done is you're just like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. There's going to be some people upset or whatever. But this is what I believe in. This is what's true to me and authentic to me, and what I'm wanting to support and put out into the world. And you're having to just move forward with that, despite knowing some people are going to have big issues with it. And so I know we've chatted about this, but what would how have you navigated that and just decided to keep moving forward despite that?
Yeah, so this has been definitely a challenging point, because I think what you also encourage us to do in the beginning of the JBA is really get clear on the foundations. What is your message? What is it all about? So if the foundation is shaky, then everything is shaky, right? So that needs to be a really solid base. So I think, when was that? I don't know, 2 months ago or a month ago, I had a little bit of a shaky, wobbly moment, because a very good friend of mine who's who I really value his opinion, came to me and was like, what is up with this gender inclusive thing? Why are you even saying that? Why it's not your story. Why is this so prevalent in your wording and in your Instagram and everything? And it got me really, really upset. I kind of went into it a little bit with him, but it was more after that, I was derailed for about 2 weeks. But I think it was a necessary thing, because it really made me go back and really look at why do I want this? Is this true to me? And really just get very clear on that. So I'm actually very grateful for him for asking me these questions. So I feel like more equipped to do that now. I think it was just really honestly for me when I was starting out, I was just really kind of going between the two of like, okay, am I going to be only doing women's jewelry, or am I going to say no, that it's actually men's jewelry? Because before my boyfriend was always wearing it, friends, and there didn't seem to be any distinction in that because my style is very, very bold and minimal. So that actually then became the essence of what I'm doing. And I'm like, I don't want to have to choose. And that's not what it's about. The whole point is that it's these really strong shapes that can unite us as human beings. And there is no difference. So then I became really, really clear on that. And I think also having spoken to some other people, and also meeting other brands that are also positioning themselves as gender inclusive, it really inspires me. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I want to fit in with this community of people. And then I get also different ways of seeing it. Like I think on my podcast, I also spoke to someone who has a gender inclusive fashion platform. And I really loved how he worded it of saying it's more of an invitation as well. So I could also not say anything about it and just present it as it is. Maybe that's like the ultimate goal, that you shouldn't have to put a label on it. But I think for me, I've also realized not everyone is there yet. So sometimes people do need just a little bit of an invitation, like, hey, this is gender inclusive. You're also welcome to wear it and try it. And this earring is not only for the woman, or this is not only for guys, So I now feel very confident and comfortable in that. And I feel like it's actually can help some people. And it's a really beautiful message of inclusivity, of equality, that I feel very strongly about. So for me, it's turned into almost half of as important as the jewelry is the message behind it, that I'm super passionate about as well. So.
And that's so powerful, because what you've essentially built is a brand with a powerful message. And so you're not just selling jewelry, you're not just selling a product, you're selling a message, you're selling a lifestyle. And that's a massive differentiating factor. That's why you're going to do so well in your business as well, because you've gone kind of all in on this. And I think with the thing with labels and that, it's great not to have labels, but people are inundated with so much content and so many businesses and so much jewelry and so much just stuff in their day-to-day life, that they sometimes do need that like label, like, oh, gender inclusive, this is me, like I love this, I'm drawn to this. And just that word is going to really draw in your ideal customers as well. So thank you for sharing your journey with that, because I know it's been a bit of it's been challenging, but I'm so glad that you're at this place now where you're feeling confident and comfortable with it. So I'd also quickly like to touch before we finish. I know we have a couple of minutes left, but for anyone who's listening to this, who's a jewelry business owner, who's kind of maybe getting started or a couple of years in, who's thinking about joining us in the Jewelry Business Academy, what would your advice be to them? What would your advice be to them?
I would say, first of all, if you're really serious about it, and if this is calling you from a deep place in your heart, then 100% go for it. I also remember before I joined, I actually reached out to a couple of the members and sent them a message on Instagram or something, and everyone responded the same way that I'm going to respond now. It's like, totally 100% go for it. I don't regret it with one tiny bit of my body. It's like, I think I would never have gotten to the place where I am now without the support system. And that's something that I'm really still learning, is to be able to ask for help and to be able to say, hey, we can do this together, and I don't need to figure everything out on my own. Because if you do this, you're actually giving yourself a chance. So, I think sometimes before I was always like, yeah, but that's a little bit like failing if you have to ask for help, or if you're doing coaching or whatever. But no, it actually means that you're taking yourself really seriously, and that you're willing to invest in yourself and in your business.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing, Julia. And I think I resonate with that as well. I've seen, even in my business, like I have coaches, and it's funny because I also used to think, to be honest with you, that the more I grow in my business, the less I need coaches. And it's actually flipped completely. The more my business grows, the more I want that support, because why on earth would I want to do this on my own? Why on earth would I want to take the whole burden of building a business on my own shoulders? And like, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot to go through life and build businesses on our own. And we wouldn't be expected to do that in the corporate world. we have our communities and we have all of that. So thank you for sharing that. And is there anything else that we haven't touched on today that you'd like to just share or talk about before we go?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. I just wanted to thank you also for your energy and your positivity, and also your knowledge. It feels like you always have something really insightful to give back. So it's not just like giving an answer just for the sake of it. You really think about it, and you really tailor your answers to individual needs of everybody in the community. And you just bring us together, which has been really so wonderful. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate your words, and I loved working with you and having you in the academy. And we're going to bring you back on in a couple of months to hear your updates, and we'll just keep bringing you on as you grow this business and grow your community. And I know we're going to have a lot of listeners who are going to be feeling really inspired by you and your story, and they're going to want to connect with you and listen to your podcast and check out your jewelry. So where can our listeners find you, and how can they support you?
So you can find me on Instagram, that is at Julia Duff. And my website with all of my collection is juliaduff.nl. That's from the Netherlands. And you can also find my podcast on Spotify and other platforms, and it's called the Elemental Connections Podcast.
Amazing. So we're going to link all of those in the show notes. So anyone wanting to go connect with Julia, you can just click on the show notes and we'll link those all directly for you to make it nice and easy. But this has been so lovely, Julia. Thank you again so much for joining me. And I can't wait to bring you back on in a couple of months.
Thank you so much, Robin. And like you said at the beginning, this is also, it feels like home talking to you. So I just want a nice warm blanket around me every time. So thanks a lot.
Oh my goodness. I feel exactly the same way. Yeah, it's such a pleasure, Julia.